So I was really like stumped this weekend because it was Valentine's weekend, which I'm all about, but it was also Super Bowl Sunday, and my husband is all about that. So how did you guys spend your weekend? Was it more Valentine's or more Super Bowl or sort of a crazy combo?
I was traveling all last week, so I just caught up with a bunch of work. So I didn't think about either until last night when people were talking about the Super Bowl. I tried to buy Tom Brady's last touchdown ball, but it went for a lot more than I could afford, so I didn't win that auction.
Yeah, we had a leadership event this weekend, so I was in sessions all weekend with my colleagues, which was awesome. So I didn't think about too much until I got home. We did the Super Bowl, and I guess I just put Valentine's Day on today. Didn't really think about it too much over the weekend, but yeah.
Love that. So just working all around, which is why you both are here and are industry experts for database prospecting.
Michelle, I'm curious, what did you do?
So I'm kind of like them. I was at a family event though. It wasn't work, but I was flying during the Super Bowl. So I was out for that. But there was a wedding, so maybe mine was more sort of Valentine's-y.
Love it. I absolutely love
Yeah.
that. Well, we're here to talk about, not just love and sports, but prospecting, which I'm really excited about. And this event is hosted by the team at Modern Sales Pros, which would be one of several of me. And if you're not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest revenue leadership community for those in sales management, sales and rev ops, adjacent fields. And our mission is to create an environment for our 20,000 and constantly growing members to answer questions they might struggle to answer on their own. We do that through great live sessions like today and our summits, which are coming up. The next one is going to be in April 12th through 14th. You can get pre-registered through that link. But enough about us, enough about MSP. This event is sponsored by the team at Atrium, and I'm going to pass it back to Michonne. I was only here to talk about MSP, to talk about Atrium, give a little spiel, and give a thanks. And I'll see you all at the end.
Thank you, Taylor. All right, Atrium is a data-driven sales management platform that helps managers use data to improve team performance. Sales managers at 200 plus companies like Figma, SalesLoft, Sonar, HRS, Clearbit, and more use the data insights and alerts in the Atrium platform to improve their team performance. It's super easy to set up. You'll just log in with your Salesforce credentials. Within 5 minutes, Atrium will show you how your reps are performing across hundreds of metrics. So you can sign up now at https get.atrium.com. All right, we will go ahead and link that in the chat as well. But today we are going to be talking about data-based prospecting. My name is Mijan Phillips. I'm an implementation specialist over at Atrium, and we've got some great experts in the field here to talk through this content. So Jorge and Morgan, before we get started, I'd love for you both to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience with prospecting.
Sure, I can go first. So my name is Jorge Estrada. I'm based out of now Providence, and I've been in sales my entire life, really. So my experience with prospecting has been, I guess, hands-on in a lot of ways. But what I've noticed is that the people that are really good at selling are the ones that are good at prospecting and enjoy it. It's a tough thing to do for a lot of people, I think, because of the rejection and it requires a lot of resilience. So whenever I look for good salespeople, I look at their ability to prospect because it really gives me a sense of whether or not they're resilient, and it just usually works out. So that's me.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, awesome, Jorge. Thank you. And yes, Morgan.
Yeah, I'm Morgan. I work at ZoomInfo. I've been at this company for 3 years now, which is crazy. Gone through a ton of different changes in that period of time. But before that, I wasn't in sales really. Well, I was, but I was in like wine sales, B2C, things of that nature. And so joining ZoomInfo, I feel like it was just, I mean, they say this for the first 2 weeks of being there like every single day, 5 times a day, but it's like drinking from a fire hose, right? Like you just have to learn everything as quickly as possible. And I think that it continues to be that way. And our whole company is sort of based on prospecting. Like we sell a tool that helps you prospect. So we're constantly talking about ways to prospect and constantly talking about ways to get better. And I got into managing an outbound team, a strategic outbound team for our customer base. And so my day in and my day out is how do we get better at prospecting? Are we making the right decisions? Are we, talking to people in the right ways? Are we coaching on good calls and bad calls and all of that? So yeah, I feel like I'm just constantly thinking about it.
Wow. I'm so excited to hear more about this. All right, before we dive into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, it's really great to have you both here. This is a great panel, and we're excited to dive into it. This event is being recorded. You will be able to access the recording and the key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. Also, if you have any questions for our panelists, we are excited to hear them. Please use the Q&A function and we'll be sure to get to them during the event as well. So our agenda for the day will be, dun, 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 drum roll, developing successful data-based sales sequences, automation to revolutionize your sales process, and reviewing the data you have, engaging scoring processes. So let's go ahead and dive into that first topic, developing successful data-backed sales sequences. This is something that's really interesting to me as I talk to sales managers and leaders. Jorge, my first question's for you. Sales, understanding your customers and trying to find the right customer. I grew up, my father was in sales, and it was one of those things where you open up the white pages, you start from A's, and you just go through cold calling people. But that's not the way we do things anymore. So what do you do as far as finding the right customer with data-backed systems?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really understanding your customer and what they do. And in a lot of ways, I think where people really get lost is when they just spend the time understanding what the overall ideal customer profile is going to look like. But then there are things like really understanding the customer buying journey and how your product or your solution really fits into them could really differ. So being able to sort of put people into different buckets that you can then utilize and derive some hypotheses based off of what you know. And when it comes to creating some of these sales sequences that are successful, it's really about trial and error, but in an informed way, if that makes sense. Not to get too scientific, but measuring things really comes down to being able to look at one or two variables. And I think where people really get lost is where they're not able to look at two different things. And whether you're A/B testing a certain kind of message, or whether you're A/B testing whether or not this is going to be an ideal customer for you, you got to be able to measure those things and know that it's okay to have some errors within your process, because everyone does. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, can I dig a little deeper? And you can totally say, yeah, no, I'm done there. But what are some like two aspects that you're looking at right now, that A/B that you are really jazzed about at this moment?
Yeah, so where I see a lot of really good potential is in intent and really taking some of the stuff that's out there. We use Zoom Info, for example, and I use it too with my teams, and looking at some areas where people are really searching for terms that could be conducive to a conversation based on a particular product or service. So doing that as a way to narrow down the amount of people that you can reach out to, knowing full well all the research that you know about your product and the industries that you're trying to hit, but intent being something that could really tell you whether or not a company itself is looking at purchasing something that you sell. Is something that could be really helpful. In a lot of ways, it doesn't tell you the full story, but it does give you a sort of a guiding direction on which to proceed, which I think is highly valuable. And thinking about the phone book example, this is now the opposite side, using some things that you can draw from what people are doing on the internet, and really drawing into those specific things to make yourself or give yourself a chance to be more successful in your outreach.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. All right, Morgan, next up for you, personalization and customized messaging. How important is that today?
Yeah, I would say very, so as a short answer, but I'll explain a little bit more. I think the last stat I heard on this was it takes now like 30 touches to get somebody's attention versus 8, which I think I had heard in the past. And I think that is not just like 30 emails and 30 calls, but like ads and all of these different ways that we're trying to get people to know at least who we are and why they might care. And at any stage of those, like the personalization, I think is super important because people are so inundated with emails, ads, phone calls, everything, especially when you get into the enterprise space where my SDRs live. Like they're trying to call, VP of something at Google, for example, right? Like that person gets hit up probably 1 million times a day. So if they're not being personalized in how they're trying to outreach them or reach out to them in their messaging, then like why would that person even look? But I think that there's ways to scale that, which is super important at ZoomInfo. We're not just thinking about being like hyper targeted all the time, or we wouldn't have the success of our company. We're always thinking about ways that we can scale and do both. And so I actually had a conversation with our ABM marketer right before this, and she said like the biggest thing she's thinking about all the time is just persona and industry, right? Like that's a way that you could simply scale a personalized message by, okay, if this persona, like, this bank advisor cares about this thing at, Citi, then I would imagine that bank advisor at Wells Fargo, it's a weird example, but also cares about that exact same thing or has those exact same problems. So you can develop your messaging around that and then scale it out.
Oh, that's great. It's a really good idea. All right, Jorge, before we got started, you were talking a little bit about the buying journey and buying teams. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I think for all intents and purposes, sales used to be, at least it would reside from a decision making perspective with 1 or 2 people, and I think that's changed a whole lot. And maybe it's a product of where we are from a technology standpoint or how people buy, but a lot of people come to the table already well informed, and now they're looking for differentiators that your product versus somebody else's product that's similar could bring to the table. And really understanding that is crucial to how you do your outreach. Obviously, if someone is living under a rock and you're trying to pitch them a very specific solution, they're not going to be receptive to it. So as I was talking about intent, some of those things could be indicators that someone might be receptive to a more thorough message or a more specific message that really caters to some of the pain that you might derive from your research or some other area where you're drawing information from. And being able to really map that out as far as where your product fits and where your outreach could really go, I think it's really important because obviously if someone is ready to buy, you want to catch them even before that happens to make sure that you're front and center when they're making the decision, which to me makes a lot of sense from a process perspective, but also for the clients themselves, right? So the world has become a lot more client centric, and you want to be able to understand what they do and how they make money and how your product might be able to fit, but also understanding where they are, right? So the VP of whatever at Google might get a million messages a day. That might not be something that is ever going to change, but if you can get your outreach in whichever channel or whatever format into the mindset of where they are as a person of their day to day, all that stuff really matters. And I think that the reality for everybody is that we have a lot of technology tools out there that help us automate a lot of things. And then what that allows you to do as a salesperson is really dive deeply into some of these more nuanced areas, figuring out where they hang out, what they do on a daily basis, who they talk to, all these things that matter from a personalization standpoint.
Awesome. So building off of this a little bit, the perfect time of day SDRs are always thinking about, and people who prospect a lot. And I think that, the rule of thumb was always Monday mornings at 10 a.m. are sort of magical. That's the magic moment, right? But beyond that, like you were saying, timing is so much. And I think that that too is customized. And there's probably a lot of data that people can look at to try to find the right times for the right people in the right industries. So Morgan, let's talk the tech stack. What's vital to find the right timing to provide the right customization so that you can build on these data-backed sales sequences?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm really excited about this question, first of all. It's probably my favorite question. However, I just thought of something for the last question.
Sure.
And actually, like, kind of a fun story that I thought I would add, if you don't mind, before
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. So I think, like, one thing that I think about in terms of personalization is like prioritizing who you're spending that extra time on versus who you're not. So like you can automate like your good or your great titles, but if it's like an excellent title that you really want to talk to, that's when you should go that extra mile, especially so that way you're not constantly always spending time on people that maybe could do it faster. So anyway, I had somebody on my team a couple years back that really needed to get a hold of the CMO at some large cell company. It might have been AT&T or Verizon or something along those lines, but could not get this person to care at all. Couldn't get them to pick up the phone, open an email, open a LinkedIn. Like, they were trying everything. And this person on my team is really creative as a human and really dedicated, and started just like researching the CMO as much as they could in every different public platform that they could find. And they somehow found out somewhere on the interwebs that they were going on a hot air balloon ride soon, and they were really excited about it. And so instead, to get their attention, they went to our CRO at the time, now our COO, and asked if we could send them a big balloon, a big like personalized balloon that looks like a hot air balloon. So he said yes, and they got this like really grandiose like replica of a hot air balloon and sent it to the CMO, and basically said like, thanks for being our customer, would love to talk, or something like that. And they finally reached back out. So anyway, I always love that story because there's definitely ways that you can get creative in terms of like, Instagram or Facebook or whatever, wherever people are posting. So, but tools, I will answer that question now. I told y'all at the beginning, I'm really not going to, or I guess backstage, I'm gonna try not to like over pitch our product, but it's really hard for me to talk about like the tools that you need to be successful in this role without talking about what we're currently using, which is our own product. So I'll do my best, but I think tools in general, like, you can't do anything without good data, right? And that's like one layer of what we sell is our data services, filling our database with like super accurate and always refreshed data. If you don't have good data, then like you're just spinning wheels, and you'll probably lose your sender score and never get a hold of people. So that's the first thing, is you need good data. Second thing is like you need to orchestrate that data. So where does it go next? So do you have a routing system? Do you have a CRM? Where does it live, and how do you send that email? Do you have like an engagement tool that'll automatically send those emails? All that orchestration piece. And then the last part is like the engagement tool. So we have an Engage tool, literally called Engage, or Outreach, something of those longs, where it'll send that email for you, but then you have to call it. And like, we're really big on phone calls at ZoomInfo in general too. So like you can send out that sequence and let it go and go. But if you're not like doing those extra steps to actually call it, then like you're doing yourself a disservice for that. So you need each piece of that. And like, I guess luckily for us, we have all of that within our own tech stack. So, there's a ton of different options for each of those, but that's my own piece. You also have to track it, right? So your engagement tool needs to tell you how good it's working and who's opening it, and if that email sucks or not. So.
No, yeah, that's great. All right, Jorge, the last sort of piece on this particular section, we've got a lot to go off of. We've got the, going through social media to really personalize and customize things based on user experience and how we handle that in the sales world. We've got tech stacks, and then also just the concept of like scaling, prospecting, and sourcing those great ops. So any last feedback from you on the data-based sales sequences?
Yeah, I think it's important to really come to the table with the theory and but you also have to understand what your business is trying to do, right? And I think in a lot of ways, when you're putting cases together or sequences together, you can have all the tools that you need. All the tech stack could be excellent, including Zoom info. And the reality is that you need to understand what the business wants out of you. So, for example, if my business is looking for logos as fast as possible, then I need to create cadences that are going to allow me to do that, right? So you have to put a little bit of thought into what that looks like. Your company could be looking for large enterprise sales, which take a lot longer than your mid-market or your small business sales. So if that's the goal, then you have to create these cadences that allow you to create relationships with people that are longer term. So really understanding your business and what the outcomes are that are important to not only you but also your team and the entire revenue organization in general, I think really allows you to create better cadences than some of the ones that I'm seeing out there. Are really tailored to understanding what's going on around the business and then the business itself. So this is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, awesome. All right, moving on to our next section, which is automation to revolutionize your sales process. So we're going to start here. A question for you, Morgan. I am a little bit of an automation junkie, but then we have to come into the question of, do we automate as much in our lives as possible or as little as necessary? What do you think?
As much as possible is the short answer. If you're careful and you're good at it, right? So again, going back to data, if you're automating a sequence to go out because this person is interested or showing intent that they're interested in your process, if you send that out to the wrong email, then it just doesn't matter. If you have data backed decisions on the ways that you're actually automating things, then yeah, like why would you not want to take something off of your plate and have it work in the background without you even thinking about it? And that allows you to free up time to do those extra things that will help you sell more or sell bigger deals. Again, going back to the automating maybe those good or great titles and then being personalized and taking more time. And I think when you can automate those background things, that'll still help you along in your process. That allows you to focus in and be super targeted on the bigger picture, I guess, on the people that you need more. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Jorge, anything else on that? Or for instance, how do you use data to ensure the automated processes are working and that you're not losing great prospects due to automation?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting about automation is that it requires a lot of integration of the different tools, and in a lot of ways your revenue organization might not know that things are happening on a daily basis that are preventing you from maximizing the automation where it's useful. So I think in a lot of ways, what I do is try to encourage people to speak up when things are not working as well as they should have. And even if they see an opportunity to leverage that technology stack in a better way, being able to communicate that across, gathering all that information from the team and then setting up a plan to make sure that all of our teams outside of the revenue organization that are helping us with that sort of thing are aware of it and that they prioritize these things, because it's tied to production. And if a salesperson's not going to be as productive from a revenue perspective without having all these great automation tools being integrated in a way that makes sense for them, then that's a problem, right? Because the revenue organization doesn't make as much money. So that's what I would really focus on to make sure that things are brought to light and are part of the entire sales process.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Morgan, I'm legitimately curious about this. In your experience and opinion, how should great sellers be spending their time in 2022? Where is the personal connection really vital, and what steps should or could be automated?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, whenever you get the chance to be personalized, I think you should. But you need to be doing that with the right targets, right? Like that's kind of what we're talking about in a lot of this is how do you figure out who those right targets are? What are you using to model what your best customer looks like, and then focusing all of your time that you can on those like right targets and the low hanging fruit. If they're the right target and they also happen to be spiking in intent for your product, then like spend time there. Don't think about it. So rather than casting this wide net, like I think have gotten away from quite a bit in terms of just like the spray and pray method. If you could figure out ways to spend as much time as possible on the people that are as likely to buy as possible, then like personalize that and spend time getting those messages right. I guess that's a pretty broad answer, but I think it really just is a way for you to figure out who's the right person and when do I talk to them.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So using, tools like Zoom Info, or even from our own standpoint, seeing how things are working on engagement with a tool like Atrium is vitally important. All
Totally.
right.
Also, sorry, one
Yeah.
last point on that too is like the relationship piece too. I think we talk about it all the time, but like people buy because they like you. A lot of times they're emotional still. Even we can get so technical on all of these things. We're talking about a lot of technical stuff, but it also comes down to building a relationship with the people that you're talking to, whether that be a new business just over a Zoom. Maybe you send them a cupcake and say thanks for meeting with me or something like that, or in existing business you really get to know your main points of contact so that they can internally sell for you. We have so many stories of how that has worked super well.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you use tools like Sendoso to make sure that like gifts are sent out and you get those personal connections as well?
Yeah, we do. It's not Sendoso. Don't remember what it is right now, but yes, we
Okay.
use something like that. I think it's yeah, I'll get back to you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you can drop it in the chat. I think all of the tools that people can go to and look up would be great.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jorge, what are the steps needed to structure and develop a really great plan for automation within a sales org?
Yeah, so I think it really varies from organization to organization, but really the number one thing is to understand where your business is and where they're trying to go and coming to a consensus around that. I think in a lot of ways, sometimes, and maybe in organizations that are not as well structured, you end up having people doing their own thing, and that's not really conducive to a proper understanding of what's going to work and what's not going to work. So when there is an initiative to drive something, let's say your organization wants to go after healthcare clients, or even more specifically, biotechnology clients, and that's something that is strategic for your business, then you have to get all the people on the same page, on the sales team in particular, to make sure that they're spending a lot of their time trying to get after these clients. For whatever reason, sometimes people will go against the grain, and that could be really good. But when it comes to creating a business where you can trial and error a lot of the things that you're going to need to trial and error to understand what's working and what's not working, you have to get the entire team on the same page and in agreement, right? Because this is going to be a collective effort. Then for me, really understanding what the industry is doing, some of these industry trends that are going to be crucial to creating some of these messages that are going to be outgoing, at least to maybe the entire list, to try and elicit some sort of reaction or response in terms of what is important to them from an industry perspective, even before the personalization comes into play. And going after sort of the account specific things that are going to allow you to talk a little bit better in terms that they understand. I think that happens after you do this initial industry research and start trying some things in your cadences. And then it really goes back to that account-based marketing, account-based selling idea of now that you understand the account, and now that you understand the buying team, what they're really looking for as an account, what they're trying to accomplish based on your research, going into the individuals and really looking at not only what they care about from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. There's been some stories shared here where people have built relationships or have gotten closer to a business relationship with somebody in their company based on some nuances that they learn about on the internet. And I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of tools for sellers now to engage with their ideal clients in a way that has not been available before. That's where I think the automation stops and allows you to talk human to human. Now that you have an established track record of relationships within an account, but also an established trust as an advisor from a business perspective. The reality is that a lot of the time, as sellers, we don't spend enough time doing that, and it puts us in a bad position, right? Because what businesses really want, in a general sense, is people that are well versed and can have a conversation and can provide value on an ongoing basis. So that's a sort of a high level answer of the steps that I tend to look at. But in a way, it makes sense to a lot of people, but in some others, it doesn't. So I'm not saying that this is the prescriptive method for everybody, but I think for me, it's worked really well. So.
Awesome. Morgan, do you have anything to add as far as like strategic planning and building these automated processes before we move to the next section?
No, I think we covered quite a bit of ground there, so I'm okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Then we also had a question come up in the chat. For Matt, what kind of budget do you suggest for the gifts that we were talking about earlier whenever we're trying to personalize things and just really show that we care? Would it be like a percentage of a potential sale? Morgan, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I'll give you, in the context of my own world, that's basically what I can provide. So my team, like I said, works with our enterprise customers. So there's always a potential for a large deal there, I think, in the way that we're thinking about it. So they have a budget. The SDRs have a budget of $200 a month. And the AEs also have something similar to that, so they can kind of work together. So that's total of $400. I think if it was a super high, like the CMO situation, right, that I was talking about, that was going to affect potentially millions of dollars. Yeah, I think it would be a percentage of that deal. Like, I think you could definitely spend more on those types of things. It's not a very specific answer for you. I think you have to kind of figure that out based on what you're selling to, because we also do like a bunch of little things too. So like we'll send like Starbucks gift cards to people before their meeting. Like, hey, we're looking forward to meeting with you. Here's $5 to have a coffee on us, and things like that to help us to have show rates for littler situations.
Awesome. Cool. All right, so we are moving on to our last section today, reviewing the data that we have, engaging scoring processes. So I'm actually going to start again with Morgan here. How often do you set and reset the goals and metrics for prospecting efficiency and activities?
Yeah, we definitely work on a month-to-month basis of setting those goals, and then take it at we work on a yearly basis. We break it down by quarter, and we break it down by month, of course. But our month over month, like when I'm setting goals for my SDRs, that's going to be your widest net. So I'll set the goals for this SDR to hit, X number of meetings. And by week 2, and I try to do this as often as possible, I say, okay, like let's track where you're at compared to where you need to be, and what do you need to do to get there based on your good fit show rate and things of that nature. And so then you can get more and more granular. If they're hitting their goals like super early on, I'm going to raise it. And like, I know salespeople are going to hate that, right? They do. But we work at a company that has really high expectations. We work at a company that wants to do really big things. They have big goals for us as a whole. And so I have to reflect that, and I have to push my SCRs to do more in a good way, where we can support them and just say, like, hey, you hit this number last month. Like, let's see if we can get you a little bit higher. And hopefully I'm hiring people who like that kind of challenge.
Well, it's just making yourself better. I mean, it makes sense. We have to be coaches, right? For the people that we work with. It's like when you go to the gym and you're doing really, really well, they're not like, oh, okay, you're at 10 right now. You can lessen that set to 5 because you did so well. No, when you get better, you add more.
Yeah, true. And it's like, for myself, like going back to that hiring thing, like I think that way about myself all the time. I'm not static as a human. I would get so bored. And I think that, like, if you can find the people who think that way all the time, then you're going to have an easier time, reaching those goals and resetting them. So
Next panel for this group is how do you find those people? Because I know that's always the other side of the question, which we don't have time to dive into today. All right, Jorge, do you have anything to add as to that question, or should we move on to predictive models?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would say about that is probably counterintuitive. I think as salespeople, we can get pretty impatient, and in a lot of ways, when you're thinking about sequences, sometimes they take a while, and you can't really draw the full picture out of the result of them until you go through them. And as much as I'd like to fail fast and fail quickly, the reality for a lot of us is that we need to go through the entire process to get an accurate depiction of how successful a particular sales motion was. So I just encourage people to be more patient as they're going through things, because otherwise you won't get the right data from what you were trying to do.
Well, that's a really good point as well. All right. So, Jorge, what types of predictive models do you recommend for sales orgs?
Ones that are iterative, and I say that with sort of a thinking about with a grain of salt, because it really depends on the type of sale and product that you're doing, but really focused around the customer, right, and what they want to hear, even where they are in their journey. I think those are the kinds of models that are really successful, and being able to leverage some of the tech stack and the automation within those models to be able to change them. I think in a lot of ways, we've gone from the old way of looking at things, where things are marketing qualified leads or sales qualified leads, and based on the spray and pay model of really qualification. But I think what's happening now is that more and more people are looking at the end outcome, which is, it could be a meeting or an opportunity as the metric to look at. And in a lot of ways, that has allowed us to be more client-centric. So if your models are not thinking about the client today, then I would encourage you to do that, because it will end up in more sales. Really, it's counterintuitive, but I think there's enough data out there to back that up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I've got 2 more questions for these amazing panelists. If you have questions that you would like us to answer, please just drop them in the chat and we will field as many as we can. While people are typing away their awesome questions on prospecting, Morgan, what are the key scoring metrics, KPIs, and sourcing strategies that you use to identify if great prospecting is actually happening?
Yeah, we have, I guess, on the scoring and modeling side of things, we have an amazing data services team that's always constantly looking, to your point, Jorge, and reiterating on what our best customers look like today, and building their models off of those commonalities, so that every lead and every contact that we have in our database gets a score based on that model, which is cool and way smarter than what I could do personally. I'm like constantly just blown away with the types of different things that they can do to help us out, so that we are, going back to that same point, always focusing on the right people. So that's pretty sweet. They'll do it based on, like, our different product sets too. So, like, for instance, we sell a sales operating system for salespeople, or ZoomInfo core platform, basically. So a piece of that is, how many salespeople does this company have? Do they sell business to business? And a really high score might be like a software company, because they're likely already buying a more sophisticated tech stack because they sell a software. And so those types of things go into that, which is different per product that we sell, of course. My marketer kind of explained all of that in a really funny way. I think she was talking about, you can go to a bar, and let's say you have like 10 guys there, and you find out that 10 guys there are interested in you, or 10 people. 10 people there, and those 10 people are interested in you, and you find that out. You know that there's intent there, right? And of those 10 people, without even looking at them, without your own judgment, you then find out that 4 of them are not only interested in you, but they're also like your type. So now, okay, your whole focus is just on those 4 people, because you're going to have the best chance of chatting, whatever you want to do. So I thought that was kind of a funny way to kind of explain how we do things. So there's that piece. On the KPI side, like I said before, we're really high on dials. I'm always looking on dials. My team has a little bit of a lower expectation than the rest of our org in terms of how much they're reaching out to, because they should be more targeted. But I'm constantly looking at, how many times did we hit 50 dials today, or at least 250 over the week? Are you actually following up on those sequences that we're spending all this time putting out there? Are you also sending out personalized emails on top of those automated sequences? I'm looking at how many contacts they export from. So we work really well with LinkedIn. We have a reach out extension, so we have a Chrome extension where you can export contacts in. So if they're doing their own prospecting, finding their own contacts there, they're exporting it into our database and calling after them the next day. So I'm looking at those metrics too. How much are they actually doing their own prospecting on top of that automated piece that we have? So all of it, all the time.
Fantastic. And the people are loving in the chat the full circle callback of dating advice and, prospecting. We've got the Valentine's Day theme here going on today. All right, Jorge, my last question, and you can tie into any of these other pieces that we've been building upon as well, but how has data-driven sales management shifted the prospecting process in your career?
I think that it used to be very much tied to just straight up numbers, and that's really good. I think you have to create goals, create metrics that are attainable. But I do think that people tend to look at how different variables, and I would look at things like the networks of people and where they hang out as an example, as a way to get your foot in the door. Not only understanding the company, the industry, and the person itself on the buying team, but also looking at where they hang out, right? And even from a personal perspective, from a business perspective. So I think it's gotten a lot more personal in a lot of ways. So when I look for salespeople, while I still look for people that can deliver dials, they can deliver emails, they can bring in a lot of that traditional sales knowledge into the table. What I really look for are people that are going to be resilient enough to be able to create a personal relationship, a trusted advisor relationship with anybody at a company, but in particular those on the buying team. And I think that's where things have gone. I think in the last 2 years, we've gotten an opportunity to be a lot more virtual, and people are more responsive to those that spend the time to really understand them as a person, them as a business person, them within their company, and not only create value for the product or the service, but also value for that person, so they continue to have conversations and hopefully build a long-lasting relationship.
Wow, that's great, guys. So we are going to wrap up the main portion of this, but before we do, just like a bite-sized nugget of a key takeaway that you think that everybody should sort of leave today thinking about whenever they consider prospecting activities. Morgan, you want to start?
Can Jorge start?
Sure.
So I would say that people that are relying on doing a lot of this automation and creating sequences. Have fun with it. Be creative. Think outside the box, because there's a lot of messages going out there on any given channel, and you have to stand out somehow. So if you have fun with it, it actually, your job gets a lot more fun. And I could tell you a lot of stories of things that I've done in the past that are maybe not as creative, but were funny and fun and ended up having some results. So I think I'll always encourage people to be creative and to have fun within their jobs. So that's been the biggest takeaway that I could give you guys.
Yeah, I love that. I think some of my favorite sequences or emails that we send out are those that are a little bit more creative. There's all these different methods that you can use to make it personalized, like that Basho email, format, or another one that was, I think, developed at Chorus back in the day, which is another product of ours. Anyway, I think they do flip the script, which I always thought was kind of fun. So they'll find like a article that somebody wrote, and then they use that same word or same phrase that they said, and they flip it in a way that like is kind of funny and makes sense to what they're saying. That it could be the article could be about the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day, but they can make it somehow about Chorus and ZoomInfo. So I love that type of stuff. I think takeaways for me, obviously it's starting with accurate data and iterative data. And that's in every part of what you're looking at. Sales is exciting and also frustrating at times because it changes all the time. What works one day might work for the next month, but it might not work next month because they figured it out. Like, we're all humans. We want to figure out when people are selling to us. So I think about, this isn't supposed to throw shade at all, but I think about like LinkedIn InMail, right? Like that worked really well until we used it so much that like now I get an InMail and I'm like, okay, they're prospecting me or reaching out for a recruiter, or like they're a recruiter. So like always being curious and always watching things, always be tracking things, and then iterate, right? Always iterate, always change, always make it fun, like do something different. So that's my takeaways.
Awesome. Well, we are going to wrap things up, but first we want to thank everyone for attending. We've really loved having you here. A special thank you to Atrium for sponsoring this event. They're doing really great things. Make sure to check them out. We will drop that link one more time in the chat. Thank you also to Morgan and Jorge for providing this great content. The recordings and key takeaways will be available on our site shortly. So don't forget to check back on that and also upcoming events. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.